All right, y'all. So we have an unlikely feud here to discuss. AOC came out the other day and she criticized the Biden administration over unrestrained support of the Israeli government. Now, look, I think it's fair to point out, AOC has been one of the better voices in the Democratic Party on this issue. But that is damning with faint praise, because very famously at the DNC, when she gave her speech, she said Kamala and Joe Biden are working endlessly for a ceasefire, something to that effect. I'm paraphrasing. And that was a lie. That was a lie. She knew that's a lie. They're gaslighting to protect Israel. And they're letting Israel get away with anything and everything. And they're continuing to send money and weapons. If they want to get Israel to stop doing their genocide, you cut off the money, you cut off the weapons, and it's over. It's done. They can't continue, right? They run out of the weapons that they have now eventually, and then what are they going to do, right? So that would get them to fall in line. So she's been very two-faced on this, right? Her rhetoric generally is better in the sense that she also views Palestinians as human beings, but lying to cover for the Biden administration and for Kamala is pretty unacceptable. But she has ramped up her criticism recently of the Israeli government, and my guess is it's because she's seeing the same thing on her timeline that I'm seeing on mine and you're seeing on yours, that we cover on this show all the time, which is just an endless barrage of videos of people in hospitals being burned alive and kids being pulled out from underneath rubble with their brain hanging out of their head. And so at a certain point, your humanity kicks in and you go, okay, what the hell, right? So again, she says to the Biden administration, she criticizes them for their unrestrained support of the Israeli government. Good. Happy she's saying that, right? I think Bernie Sanders is doing some bill now that would cut off weapons to the Israeli government. Okay, good. Guys, by the way, I should just point out, it's like astonishingly few Congress people are willing to take those. It's like 17 or something like that who are like, yeah, we should cut off weapons to Israel. I mean, just mind-boggling depravity, right? But so AOC criticized the Israeli government. Then guess what? Their little sycophantic ogre bitch boy jumps in out of nowhere, and he says this, ready? The tragedy in Gaza is 100% on Hamas. Stop using civilians and hospitals as shields. Surrender and release all remaining hostages, and this ends. Oh, I'm just seeing now, I replied to him, and that's... I said your brain is oatmeal to him, and I got 11,000 likes. That's almost a ratio. But it's not. He has 16,000. So, but anyway, so AOC fired back. She says, I don't know, man. I care about little kids dying. I care about human rights. I care that billions of U.S. tax dollars worth of weapons are carrying out unspeakable atrocities. I care enough for us to do better. Hope this bleak dunk attempt gets you whatever it is you're looking for. This is what we've been looking for from AOC, right? As a co-founder of Justice Democrats, I could tell you the whole idea was we want to do a Tea Party of the left that holds the Republicans accountable, but also holds the corporate establishment Democrats responsible, and really is a crusading force for the policies that we think would help this country. And it's sort of like a take no prisoners type thing. And this, like, it's rare you see her in these like big feuds with other Democrats, but it took Ogre Man coming out and lying to protect Israel as they're doing a genocide for her to say, you know what? Fuck this guy. Fuck this guy. So again, he says it's 100% on Hamas. 100% on Hamas. Let me give you guys some facts, because, I'm kind of a numbers guy. I'm bad at math, but I am a numbers guy. When I see numbers, it sort of cuts through all the bullshit and gets right to the heart of the matter. Look at this. 10% of the population is either killed, injured, missing, or detained in Gaza. And I should point out, this is an outdated infographic, but it was the most recent one that has like the full breakdown, so I wanted to share it with you. The outdated number is 49,032 Palestinians killed in Gaza. Of that number, 44,180 are innocent civilians. 16,164 are children, and 10,399 are women. Now, I want to reiterate here, John Fetterman says the tragedy, passive language, tragedy. It's like they got hit with a natural disaster, right? It's a tragedy. It's 100% on Hamas. So look at what he's willing to sweep aside or brush under the rug here to protect Israel. He's saying all 44,180 dead civilians, that's on Hamas. Okay, but what if it was U.S. weapons fired by the IDF, the Israeli military, directly at civilians? How is that the fault of Hamas? How is that the fault of Hamas? What he does is he takes away agency from the Israelis. That's what he does. And it's hilarious because this is oftentimes what people accuse the left of doing for Palestinians. He actually does it for Israelis. 16,164 children killed, 10,399 women killed. I should point out, there were I believe it was 99 U.S. doctors who were in Gaza, who then wrote the Gaza letters and sent it to Biden and to the U.S. government and was like, hey, this is what we saw, right? They say the number of dead is more like 118,000. That's what they say. And then you have The Lancet, which said when you include direct and indirect war deaths, they say it's 189,000 dead Palestinians in Gaza. These are the numbers we're talking about. There's a U.S. doctor who's doing a media tour who's saying in no uncertain terms, hey, kids are getting shot directly in the heart and directly in the head. I've never seen so many kids with headshot gun wounds in my life. We get multiple every day. This is what he's saying. Now, by the way, the New York Times had a piece on this, and a whole bunch of right-wing Zionist idiots came out and accused the New York Times of lying, saying this isn't true, right? And then the New York Times fired back and said, we literally have photo evidence that we didn't run because it is too gruesome, that we think it's tasteless to run it, but we have the photo evidence, so we know this is accurate. And it's like, what, have they not seen that same doctor that we covered on the show the other day? He's been on like 4 or 5 different news outlets having the exact same story, talking about the kids getting shot in the head. And they just like, the fact that they refuse to believe such things, right? It shows how warped and biased their own worldview is. That they feel like, well, Israel has to be the good guy because I've already decided they're the good guy. I've already decided they represent enlightened Western values and liberal democracy. Therefore, they could never and would never do such a thing. Anytime Israel kills any civilians, it's an oopsie. Or, jiu-jitsu move, it's Hamas's fault, even if they're the ones who are purposely targeting civilians nonstop. They continue here. There's 3,600 detainees who have been forcibly disappeared. So that's the number of Palestinian hostages held by Israel. You often hear about the reverse of that. You hear about the Israeli hostages held by Hamas in Gaza. You never hear about the 3,600 hostages that are Palestinian and they're held by Israel. 90% of the population has been forcibly displaced in Gaza. Again, let me ask John Fetterman, how is that the fault of Hamas? So Israel does collective punishment, and that's somehow the fault of Hamas. They do a total siege, cut off food, fuel, water, electricity, and they know that's going to impact civilians. They know it's going to go after innocent women and children and men, and that's somehow the fault of Hamas? No, Israel has agency, and they're doing these things, and they're doing them on purpose. How is it Hamas's fault that 1,240 healthcare professionals have been attacked and 523 have been killed? Now, he literally said, he says it in the tweet. He goes, they're just using hospitals. They're using civilians and hospitals as shields. You know how many hospitals have been attacked in Gaza? Ready? Over 30. Over 30 of them have been attacked. Is it his contention that attacking over 30 hospitals is, bro, we're just doing a super surgical targeted attack on Hamas, bro? That's what we're doing. Is anybody dumb enough to believe that? Which, by the way, I mean, stop and think about this for a second. If there's a school shooter and they go into they do a shooting or whatever, then they go into a classroom and lock the door, right? What Israel does is the equivalent of like the local police drone striking the entire school as that kid is holed up in one of the classrooms. And nobody in their right mind would look at that and say, yeah, that makes sense. Go do that. or there's a shooter and they're in a hospital and they hide in one of the rooms, and then you go, send a fighter jet to eviscerate and demolish the entire hospital with 400 people in it. Everybody looks at it in the context of any other situation and goes, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. But in the context of Gaza, since Palestinians have been so fully dehumanized, everybody looks at it and they're like, well, something human shields. By the way, I should also point out, if we're going to have the conversation about human shields, there was a big report that just came out about how Israel is using human shields. This has been exposed. So, and look, I can go on. 172 journalists killed. One was just killed this past week. They've killed the family members of journalists. More journalists have died in this instance than any other conflict in human history. Why? Because Israel is targeting journalists. You know who else they're targeting? The UN, human rights workers, healthcare professionals, right? And name a kind of civilian infrastructure, and they're bombing it. They're attacking. 97% of the per capita share of water has decreased due to the extensive destruction of water infrastructure. That's another thing they've bombed, water infrastructure. Here's another one for you. 80% of the agricultural lands in Gaza are now destroyed. 80%. They're destroying the civilian population on purpose. Netanyahu's openly talking about starving out North Gaza, literally letting them slowly starve to death. Again, we have words to describe these things. I can think of two of them. One starts with a G, one starts with an H. But no, you got the little ogre, weasel, sycophant boy out there still. Like, here's my question. What would Israel have to do in order to get some condemnation from John Fetterman? And I sincerely believe there is nothing that they could do that would make him say, too far. I honestly believe they could nuke Gaza and he would defend it. I honestly believe that. Because they've already used the 2,000-pound bunker buster bombs, which the U.S. refused to use, even in Iraq and in Fallujah, because we said, hey, the civilian the damage would be too much. They're using it no problem. They bombed, residential buildings to get Hezbollah leaders in Beirut. They bombed in Tehran, Iran, to get the head of the Hamas political wing, who was literally engaged in negotiating for a ceasefire. He was the dovish wing of Hamas engaged in ceasefire talks, and he was murked during the ceasefire talks by Israel. Gee, I wonder if they're interested in peace or not. He's got this conflict completely backwards in his mind. Oh, Israel are angels, and they've never done anything wrong, and they mean really well, and all these. And these Palestinians are barbarians and savages, and they're backwards, and they don't want peace, and everything that bad that's ever happened is on them. 96% of the population in Gaza face high levels of acute food insecurity. Around 100 Palestinians, including 42 children, have died due to severe malnutrition. These are the numbers. This is the reality. And AOC must feel like she's in the Twilight Zone when she says, like, hey, maybe we should stop arming and funding the people who are carrying out a genocide. And the response is, the tragedy in Gaza is 100% on Hamas. Stop using civilians and hospitals as human shields. Surrender and release all remaining hostages. End this ends. By the way, the fact that he believes that shows he's a fucking moron. The fact that he thinks if Hamas releases all the hostages, right, and surrenders, that, oh, this is all over. He's got another thing coming. No, Israel has made very, very clear it wants to expand. They're already in the process of trying to resettle parts of Gaza. They're already in the process of doing that. They're already in the process of encroaching further in the West Bank. Trump wants to officially let Israel annex the entire West Bank. They're already in the process of taking South Lebanon, pushing the Lebanese north of the Litani River and taking that territory. They want a greater Israel. So if Hamas and Hezbollah, if they all laid down their weapons and all the hostages were released, if all of that happened, you know what Israel would continue to do? Exactly what they're doing now. They would keep bombing innocent men, women, and children and saying, oh, it's Hamas, it's Hezbollah. It's the remnants of those groups that still wants to fight us. It's a terrorist stronghold. It's a Hamas command and control center. They would keep bombing. They would keep starving civilian populations, and they would keep doing territorial expansion. That's the reality. They are a settler, colonial, expansionist apartheid state. That's what they are. And anybody telling you otherwise is just fucking flat out wrong. They're just wrong. Hey y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop, and watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.